Item 9, Community Facilities Earthquake Rebuild Programme bi-monthly update for July 2019. Darren, welcome to the table. Any commentary on this report before we take questions?
Atamare, yes, I've got Paul McKeefrey with me today because a lot of the questions historically in the last wee while have been around the service that my team project manage and deliver for this guy. So we work hand in glove together in the same group. So Paul manages all the community centres throughout Christchurch. We work to deliver that service for him through rebuilds and repairs, etc., etc. I just wanted to take a minute to recognise some of the fantastic work my team have done in the last wee while, which has been recognised on a national stage, kind of the mouse that roared, and I'm really proud of that. We've won some New Zealand awards in the last 2 months, and Alistair Pearson's team and the majors have been at the same table as well. So we've picked up, I think, some pretty impressive awards. The New Zealand Commercial Projects Awards, held in May. The Woolston Community Library won silver in its category for the public facility category. It was up against a whole lot of facilities nationwide, picked up silver there. The Old Stone House Community Centre in Craycroft won gold in the heritage category. Thank you. These are all delivered under Richie's heritage portfolio. And the Rose Chapel won in all of the projects, the $2 to $5 million projects throughout New Zealand, that won the best commercial value project in New Zealand. It also won gold in the heritage category, and it won the national category as well. So we're cleaning up there. And then last month, the Rose Chapel got a New Zealand Institute of Architects award, as did the Woolston Community Library. So it goes to show that we're doing something pretty special here.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, absolutely. Well done to you and the team. I mean, congratulations on delivering what has been a difficult and complex and, you know, at times fraught programme of work, which has been ongoing for a long time. As all of us move around town, we continue to hear very positive comments within communities about the work that's been done. In some cases where buildings have been retained or replaced, when the community expectation may have been a fear that buildings wouldn't be retained or replaced. And I mean, certainly if I think back to the early stages of this programme of work when it was first put together and the way that it was done, you know, so much has been achieved in just about all parts of the city, and it's really right that you and your team should be appropriately commended for the work that you've done. So well done. I think we'll look back on this programme with a lot of appreciation in years to come. I think the legacy of this will be significant, to be honest.
Thank you.
So well done. Thank you. Tim, yeah.
Yeah, look, absolutely outstanding, and I think to remember what the work to get to this point is, and Rich and his team, you know, the pre-meetings that we had with that community with regards to the Old Stone House was so valuable, and the time that Rich and his team took and the respect that was given to a group of people with passion was absolutely outstanding, and even with the garden around it and everything. So, you know, we are leading, and you reap the benefits of hard work and good solid foundation to that work. So again, congratulations to you, Rich, and all the team. Well
That's
done.
great. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
So, yeah, questions.
Yeah, sure. Yanni, I will take a comment on that, and then we'll move, and then after that we will move into questions.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to acknowledge our staff and say thank you very much, and also just, I mean, if you could pass on to a number of those contractors who worked on those, the actual workers and some of those subcontractors. I know when we've done tours, I was really impressed with the work, and I think it's a tribute to them as well. So great to see the awards being won, and thank you to those people that have done the hard work on that.
Great, thank you. Now let's move into some questions. Or Darren, did you have any commentary on the actual report itself before we move to questions?
Well, only than that, it's bi-monthly. We're getting very close now to sort of, there's two parts to it. There's the heritage program, and then there's kind of everything else, pools, libraries, community facilities. We're just about through on the community facilities side. We've got a few projects on hold, which no doubt questions will come about today. And a few metrics around the finances in the front. But no, that's probably it.
All right, that's great. So now let's move to questions. Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. Darren, two questions. The first one, I just want to know regarding to this community facility, the review program. Before, I remember staff presented to the Social Community Development Housing Committee, but now it's a report to the Finance Performance Committee. I just want to know whether still staff will, present to the Social Committee, Development Housing Committee or not, or no more?
No, that was under talk to my general manager, and it was agreed that this as a program of work was more appropriate to be coming through as a program, capital program, through this committee. So hasn't been at the social for, I want to say, a year.
Yeah, this was one of the items that came to this committee when we reformed this committee that previously had gone to the other committee. Certainly we wouldn't be reporting the same item to two committees. It comes here now, it doesn't go there.
Yeah, but if that's true, I have a question. I remember back to the February of this year, I remember Social Committee, Development House Committee request staff, have organized a site visit regarding the Yohos Rural Memorial Hall, and also after that report back to the Social Committee. And staff already organized that kind of site visit. That's pretty good, have a project, and also the heritage team and the councillors. We was there all impressed. Those kind of facilities repairable and also eligible apply for through a discipline as the our heritage facility. But now no any further response. So I just want to know, because in Social Committee no any kind of point to receive the report. So this one, when and where channel will be report to the council meeting or committee?
So very aware of the Oldhurst Hall at the moment. Paul's probably best placed to talk about that from a stewardship perspective of the facility.
Yes.
My team have been doing a bit of preliminary work around how broken it is and what it might cost to either repair, etc. But Paul can talk about the process as it relates to the committee.
So just on Jimmy's...
Which committee? Which committee? This committee or social committee? But
So
I didn't hear.
if we can pin this down into a specific question, the question really is there a report which was to come back to the Social and Community Development and Housing Committee? Was there ever a report that was meant to come back there? And if so, is it the intention that that report would come to this committee now instead, or where would that piece of work land if indeed it exists?
So the resolution per se, at the meeting that Councillor Chen talked about, we did agree that there was more information to be gathered around the Oldhurst Hall.
Yes.
There was the request that information could be provided back to the committee. At the moment, we haven't got all of the information from the Oldhurst Rural Residents Association, and nor have we got all the information that we can report back to any committee, whether it be your committee or this current committee.
I was just going to say that the individual project which they're looking at here could go back through social community.
Yeah.
Yes.
The program, the overall program, comes back through this.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that's an important point.
Yeah.
That the project as a community facility belongs in the Social and Community Development and Housing Committee. The programme of work, which we're interested in here,
Okay.
belongs at this committee.
Okay, one more question, Chair. Okay. The 2.2, regarding forecast $4 million, I just want to know what the $4 million is being held for, and when there will be a position to review this surplus, $4 million.
The $4 million, so this keeps coming up time and time again, and then in fact the Mayor requested a paper last year, which I presented, I think it was last year, or it could have been years ago, days become weeks, months and years, around what that is. So very simply, when the project was set up, when the program was set up, it was agreed August the 28th, 2014, go ahead and fix the following facilities. That was in lieu of the insurance settlement at that time. So the projects were given funding based on the total sum insured. None of them had contingency. The contingency sat separately to the project, and there's been tight mechanisms around what that is and isn't used for. So that $4 million at the moment is showing as a forecast surplus. However, what it is a risk management fund. The projects that are left to remain in the program to be delivered, those projects that were approved by the elected members in 2014, of which there are still quite a few to do, even though I say I'm getting close, there is a risk allocation against those remaining projects. So that money is being held for possible contingency risks in each of those projects. The biggest one I would say would be, in my mind, the South Library, which we originally had $15 million in for, and about 4 or 5 years ago, previous teams said they could deliver a solution for 7 or 8 million. I don't personally believe until we reinvestigate, and we're starting at this financial year, whether that price is still valid. So we may hold $1 million or so of the 4 million to cover escalation or unforeseen on that. So for the second part of your question, I would say at the end of this financial year, when we've completed a whole lot more of these projects, then I'll be in a better position to comment about how much of that money is available for any of the rest of the program. But it's being used specifically and discreetly for, there's nothing in there for betterment, it's for the unforeseen, and it's for particularly doing repairs, taking them up to the new building code.
Thank you.
And the access to it is safeguarded through an internal change request process, which works through various levels and goes up to ELT for approval. And there are some rules around how we use that money. It's just not sitting there doing nothing. And I'd love to finish the program and say we've delivered it and here's some money back.
Thank you. Yanni.
I just wanted to check, is there a sort of budget that's put aside for building resilience to the building? Given what we know with our insurance, it's harder, it's going to get more expensive to have insurance. Our insurance isn't going to cover everything, if or when the Alpine fault goes, that's probably a better way of putting it. Then, do we have a resilience thing that we're able to access in terms of things like foundations for our projects?
No.
So how can we do that if it seems like a sensible thing to do? What would be the best way of just incorporating, I guess, that higher level of resilience into the building design? Noting that we don't have a lot left to do, but, for the ones that we do, I think some of us would be quite keen to have that as an option.
Yep. Well, yep.
You might be able to comment on, you talked before about the money for bringing and building them back to the new code. So could you comment on whether that additional resilience might form part of that work anyway to bring it up to code?
Yeah, so from the work I've done, and I've been on a few tours around town with building engineers and building surveys and bits and pieces, the resilience aspect, and I may be telling you what you already know, relates to the fact that some of the buildings across the road in the Kingwood Barracks, they can withstand, so all the buildings will now meet code, which means people will safely leave these buildings. The resilience component talks about the ability for them to be usable again shortly thereafter in event. So if we had another massive seismic event, the buildings that we've built to building code will allow everybody within to safely leave the building. It doesn't necessarily mean they are then reusable. That's what I understand the resilience component to be, and I don't think we've built that resiliency, using that terminology, into any of the new builds we've done. They're all seismically strong, they all feature building code, around thermal envelopes and what have you, but there hasn't been, in the absence of any clear, direction or instruction, any resiliency built into those, which may have been an oversight now that we're 9 years down the track, but that's the honest truth where we are.
So, maybe we can ask the Chief Resilience Officer to come and talk to us about that, or, I know, for the Opawa Library, which I know it's great, work's progressing, the building consent's just about to go in or may have been lodged.
Yep,
but I know that the initial designs did focus on including some of that, and it was cut back for budget reason. And I would hope, it's probably more, I think you're right, it's a matter for the committee at a governance level around whether we want to see this as something that we do. Personally, I think with what we're hearing around the insurance industry and what we know about future risk, we'd be silly not to do it, in my view, but let's have a chance to have that conversation.
It might be something that we put forward as a briefing topic at some stage, so that we can have a workshop or an informal conversation that might then lead to a more formal position being taken, more formal policy position being taken.
The point is that that contingency budget cannot be used for resiliency at the moment. That's the key message that I've heard.
It hasn't been, and, well, unless there's some clear direction otherwise, but I'm looking at you, Brent.
I think we need to have that other conversation that we just referred to, first of all, and if that then resulted in some direction that changed the way that we would view any of the remaining projects, that would be a policy decision that we would put in place at that time.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Pauline, and then Dion, and then Aaron. Pauline.
Yeah, thank you. My question's about the St Albans Community
Yep.
Centre.
Yep.
Okay. So considering this one was closed on the 5th of September 2010, it's been a long time coming. Can you help me with the graph there on page 68? So you've got the blue line is the actual spend to date, which is 600 and something, which does include the purchase of that section at 350,
Yep.
so we spent
Yep.
300 and something. So the grey line is predicted forecast. What does that mean? By June 2020 we would have spent...
For the avoidance of doubt, just ignore that. That's computer generated, and I'm not going to... Is Andrew still here? Yeah, the PMO typically take the money we've spent to date. If you just extrapolated that out as generally a straight line, where would it go? So what you should be looking at is the yellow line.
one.
Yeah.
So that's looking at a completion date of September 2020 then.
I will ask the project manager, Richie. October 2020.
October 2020. So I also know that because this one has hit some bumps and it has been delayed, we removed the temporary transitional centre off that land in preparation for this build. How long ago? Two years?
To McFarlane
3
Park.
No, it was a year and a half, 18 months ago.
So this was expected to have been finished probably a year ago. So I know that we've got a very brief current status, 2 lines there. But what we haven't got in there is how long, and I'd like to see this, how long the tender evaluation process will be, where the building consent timeline is, where the variation of the resource consent application timeline is. So I think, would it be possible to have those in for the next report?
Yeah,
So that-
absolutely, no problem at all.
because I don't know why we hadn't lodged a variation of consent earlier or a building consent earlier. Rich, you might be able to answer that.
Well, we can either, do you want to do it here, or do you want to have a, we can just, it's up to you. All right, there you go. As well as running the Heritage Program, Richie's also project managing this project.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Richard.
So, Councillor Cotter, we've got the resource consent variation and the building consent in. It's expected to come back to us in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
What was the other questions, I'm sorry?
The tender evaluation process, how long will that take?
So
Because
I've
that
extended...
closes in July the 16th?
Yeah, I've extended that into the first week of August because one of the tenders, we've got 4 selected builders. One of them didn't have enough time to submit, and I need all 4 responses because the budgets are tight. So I've extended that in the first week of August. We've got a period of about 4 weeks then to evaluate the tenders. I've also built in a 2-week window if we've got budget issues to sit down with the preferred contractor and discuss cost savings.
The market's really hungry for this job. There's less and less work available in the vertical space in Christchurch at the moment. The last job we put out for tender, we had 22 tenders put in for the job, so we've narrowed this down to 4, and all 4 are very, very hungry for this work. They've asked for a little bit longer because we're sourcing the product out of Europe, the cross-laminated timber. So we think in the interests of safeguarding the budget for the citizens, we're going to give them a bit longer to hone it so that we get the best price we possibly can.
Yeah, okay, so I've got a couple more questions. So considering that you've pushed out the tendering and all that, when do you think construction will begin?
I'm hoping to get the contractors on site in October this year.
October, that's great. And the other thing is, with the CLT, there are people talking about our, and I also want to build in our procurement and sustainability features in there too, but part of that is the CLT coming from overseas.
Yes.
How do we rationalise that with our climate change targets rather than a local product?
Part of the sustainability for this project was ordering the CLT locally,
Yeah.
supporting the local
Nelson.
community, but unfortunately everything changed. The Nelson-based company, who also has a facility in Australia, basically bumped the prices up significantly, which means the budget for St Albans was cost prohibitive. They also moved they closed down their Nelson plant. They've moved it over to Australia. Basically, we can't source the product from there locally within the current budget. So we've We've looked around the world. There's several suppliers in Europe, Austria being one of them, significantly cheaper, and they're having a lot of success importing that stuff into New Zealand and getting it right. So
I talked to Julie Villard, who's the council's sustainability eco-design person.
Yeah.
She's a great champion of the product that we're getting out of Europe.
this is it.
There it is there. Here's one he made earlier. It is so the council's an eco-design advisor is delighted we're using this product, and as Richie said at the time, XLAM, the sands moved. They've moved out of New Zealand, so disappointing from that perspective at a national level. But this product here, I think Julie herself has used it in her own house. It's a great product, and our 4 building contractors are now working with suppliers to get this stuff out of Europe. So we've got no concerns around any of this stuff. It's still a great sustainable product.
So what is the risk of that being delayed in delivery? Is there any risk?
Well, there's a
There's
risk.
also a risk, yeah. We've got a 12-week window we expect for shipping from Europe to us. In the meantime, we've got sites set up, we've got all sorts of other jobs going on, so we've set the program so it shouldn't delay the project, but it is a risk.
So has it been ordered?
No, the council aren't taking on that risk. We are passing that risk to the contractor.
Oh, once the tender goes
So once
out.
the tender gets accepted, they'll put the order in.
Right.
We are running this thing as hard and as fast as we possibly can. Yeah.
Now the other thing is, what about in our procurement sustainability features? And this is I'm hearing this from the community as well. There's no provision for things like solar panels, rain tanks, passive heating.
Yep.
And when you answer that, can you also tell us what sustainable features will be in there?
Certainly. So let's start from the top about what we're going to be putting in. So as far as insulation goes, for sustainability, we've basically put a high insulation rating well above the building consent, so it's easier to heat. We've got basically a largely timber frame, which this word is sequestering carbon, which basically means for 50 years the design will basically suck in the carbon for the life of the building. Don't question me on that one because I'm not an expert. Passive solar design and glazing. So the majority of the glazing is north facing, which will catch the sun in the winter and reduce costs. There's generous eaves to prevent overheating in summer. Mechanical systems, we've got heat pumps throughout. In the hall we've got a smart heat recovery ducted system, which basically, as the exhaust air is coming out of the building that's hot, it'll heat the cold air coming in. As you pointed out, Councillor Scott, we don't have budget for what would you like to do. Solar panels, solar water heating would be ideal, but it does not fit in the current budget.
Right, and so are we able to get a costing for that?
Certainly.
Yep. Because we may be able to fundraise for that somewhere else. The community's really keen to be involved.
Yep.
So, and I understand they're going to be contributing to the landscaping,
I hope so.
reducing the costs there.
Yes, I hope so too.
So around the procurement side of it, it's a great one because it's my own personal crusade.
Is it?
Oh yeah. I'm doing a lot of work. I've been meeting with Gapfiller and Akina because we've now got a 10% slice in our procurement policy which talks about sustainable procurement, and I'm trying to make that real in the work we do. But we're in procurement now, so I'm talking to the contractors that do a lot of our work to make sure they understand what they can be doing in that space, and it's not just environmental, it's around social procurement, social enterprise, etc. It's bloody hard because whilst it's only 10%, we've still got quite a significant focus, and we're here at Finance and Performance, around the cost of these things. But I'm trying. It's hard. There's one of me and a few of my team, and there's a few projects.
Yeah, I can hear that, but at the same time, we have made a commitment to this. This is a particularly critical green community, and we only get one chance to get this right. And also, this will be run by a community organisation rather than council, so wherever we can to keep their running costs down is going to be of huge benefit. So I'm just wondering if we could, if this was all in the report, it would be really good, and particularly the features that you have just told me that you're putting in. So a slightly fuller report I think would be really good. And one last question, if I may, is the site's sitting there empty, it's got the Fahey fences around it. When are we going to get a board outside on those fences to tell people what's happening? And on those boards, can we have this information, please?
Yes, as soon as possible is the answer to that,
Which is
in the next week or so. I'll get on hold of comms and I'll arrange it now. What we were going to put is the signages when we actually go to construction, so we're telling them what we're doing, but certainly we can do that.
I think fairly soon, and even a link to a council site where there is more information if they want it would be really good, but particularly the sustainable features, people are hungry for that. And
Okay.
they really, yeah.
That's great. Thank
Thanks for your indulgence on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes,
So
yes, I will. Yep.
Yep. So moving on, Dion, Aaron, and then Mike. Dion.
Yeah, just quick one around the Bend Rotunda, the Edmonds one.
Yep.
Have we secured the financing on that thing? We did.
Yes.
Great. So there's certainty about the project going to
It's
head.
in procurement.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just about to go to procurement.
To find a builder.
Oh, that's really good news.
It is great news, yeah.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing the next stage of it.
Thank you. Aaron.
Couple of quick questions around one's projects like the Riccarton Community Centre and the Opawa Library that are new builds. Can we on here get the square meterage? Because it's got the budget.
Cost per square metre or?
No, the square meterage
Oh,
of
the
the
size.
project.
Yep.
Just because then people can do wee back of the envelopes. Because I look at the Opawa one and it looks about the size of a house and it's 667, so it seems about right. And then other projects are the same cost as Burwood Hospital per square metre. So, and we're not going to operate in any of them, I don't think. Well, not yet. And then my other question would be on the wood there. Is that the cladding?
Sorry, what's the question?
Is it
that,
cladding?
No, it's basically, it's internal structure. It's, if you took the CLT out and used normal timber,
Stop banging the table.
sorry.
Right.
If you took this product out, which I did ask was an option, you would have to then put in a steel structure into the building. So this is a structural product.
So it's load. No, it won't be load bearing if it's internal walls.
Yeah, it is.
It is load bearing.
Yes, sorry.
You've got load bearing internal walls.
Yes.
So if you ever make changes to the building, that's going to be quite expensive.
We built the Heathcote Community Centre out across laminated timber, so it's increasingly, for the fact you're not using coal to make steel to buy it from China, I know it's coming from Europe, but it's
Right.
got the embodied carbon content, and so it's proven.
And what's the square meterage rate on that?
I'm sorry, I don't
Is
have
it
that
product?
with me.
We'll factor that in next time we come back.
Yeah, just be handy to know because single story buildings, most places still wood frame, 4x2 plywood, or internal ply if it's a commercial space, or you might go jib board. Cool.
Thank you. Mike.
Thanks, Andrew. Just a question from your projects removed from program list
Yes.
around the Shirley Community Centre.
Yep.
Underneath in that paragraph there, you actually talk about it being removed from the budget, then go on to another community centre for the Burwood, Avondale and Dallington area. I just want to make sure that actually this the Shirley Community Centre has not been removed from budget to allow another community centre in another area to be built.
Yeah, I apologise for the ambiguity there. So no, it hasn't. So we did have funding in this program. It was a priority project. It had some money into, at that point it was envisaged we would rebuild the Shirley Community Centre on Shirley Road through the LTP process last time. So the 18 to 28 plan, the money for that through the LTP voting was completely removed. So there is zero budget for a Shirley Community Centre. The apology I made is probably the ambiguity there around what future facilities in that part of town might look like, and that'll be for Paul to determine through the Community Facilities Network Plan. So just to be crystal clear, there is no funding for a Shirley Community Centre. and any future community centre in that ward would be the product of the community facilities network plan.
So when we went through the long-term plan process, and the Shirley Community Centre was obviously removed, what we were informed was it was actually pushed out past 2028 and the years from 2029 and so on, and actually the money was still sitting out there and would therefore become available in the next long-term plan process. And I guess that was the understanding we had and the reason why we actually voted that way to allow it to happen. Are you saying that's not correct?
I'm saying I don't know, sorry. I was told it was removed. I don't know.
Okay.
I can find out.
Yeah, because the other thing I'd like to find out if that is correct, and also that the money's not actually tagged to a community facility as such, but actually the site, because we're having an ongoing conversation with that community about what actually needs to happen to that site. And it may not be necessarily a community centre, it could be something else. But obviously we need the money on budget at some stage to make that happen.
I will do my best to check and find out for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we can get that information and have it circulated to the whole committee, that would be good. And obviously anticipating some future discussion around LTP and being prepared for that discussion when it happens.
Can I just clarify that the budget in the long-term plan is for 10 years? We don't do the actual budgets beyond there. We do infrastructure strategies and financing strategies beyond the 10 years, but we don't actually put money on budget beyond a 10-year window.
Well, that's actually very concerning, because the information we were told when we were making the decision was that I think it was about $2.8 million was pushed out to the following years, 2029. Had we known actually it was gone completely, it would have changed the whole decision-making process around the Shirley Community Centre.
All right, let's pick this up offline. Clearly getting current and up-to-date information is the important thing. And also, clearly, there's going to be some positioning required as we move into the next LTP, because I imagine from the comments that Mike has raised, he's going to be very keen to see this brought back into the LTP, and there'll be a process we need to go through to make that happen, if that's the desire of council.
The missing funds, the way they disappeared, was quite a shock to the entire community board, and we were kind of assured that, well, actually it hasn't gone completely, it's just pushed out.
So there's a need for education and understanding by the sounds of things around annual plan and LTP decision making and the implications of that, and ensuring that maybe what has been an unintended outcome is called out clearly at the time that we make the decision.
That's right. And there is a big push from the community to know what's going on and to get that back. However, the upside of this all is that we have retained the site, and there's no indication of selling that site. In fact, we've got something out for consultation for a temporary use of the site. So that's a good thing.
Okay, we've moved well beyond questions here, and obviously if there's information that the community board are wanting coming out of the annual plan decision making, then the community board might want to ask for that information for them as well. Darren.
Just one last comment. I'm due back here one last time before the end of the electoral term in the September meeting. If there's any information that's required around the projects in here, I'm noting that's a 2-month gap before the next time I'm back. I'm happy to take those directly in an email or whatever.
That would be good, and it also would be good if people were able to signal if there are particular projects that we're wanting to question in this meeting the next time you bring the report back, so that you can be well prepared with detailed information.
Yes.
That's fine. Thank you. Sarah.
You will be going to social and community though, so
with this information?
Not specifically, but all of the facilities updates go through. So if there's questions that people want sooner, then through social and community with some of that stuff as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. That's good to know. Tim.
Thank you. This morning, Darren, in the pre-council meeting, I asked a question with regards to projects removed on page 78 with regards to the Hunsbury Playground Community Building. But I've since had Brent Smith had a word in my ear, so I'll be talking to him offline. But I guess just to give a heads up, when we set up council or community council partnerships, we want to set them up so they don't struggle. So I guess it's not so much your cause it's probably more you, Paul, how we get those relationships going. But as I said, I'll catch up with Brent and yeah, we'll keep in the loop if that's...
Agreed.
Yeah.
And more information will come out to the community boards in relation to the activation part as we're socialising the community facilities network plan over the next couple of weeks. So we've already been out to 2 boards, and so we are talking about that and sharing that information around that.
And I was actually going to mention that because it's sensitivity as we go into an election. Not that anyone's sensitive about that at all. It is key to keep the whole community board. So if that could be done through the chair, that would be really good. But I'll catch up with.
And that comes back to a point that's been made repeatedly in the past, that, you know, partnering with community groups around these facilities is a great thing, and it's certainly something that we'd encourage, but we need to be sure that as well as willingness, there's capacity and capability on the part of each community group that we're working with, so that we're not inadvertently setting anybody up to fail.
Yep, but comments noted.
Yeah.
And that's the comment. We don't even want to set them up to struggle, and I think that's the first piece, because if they're going to... by the time they get to fail, the relationship's gone. So it's actually, but...
All right, that's great. Are there any further questions on this report? I just had one question then, just to wrap this. If we look at the projects still to be delivered, I note that there are 3 Banks Peninsula facilities on there, 2 of which I'm probably more concerned about than the other. There's a process that we've gone through with the former council stables, Kukapa Hostel and the Little River Coronation Library. That process presumably is intended to be the process that determines the future use that means those projects can be brought off hold. There's a link between the two, which results in projects coming off hold.
And then we activate our PM team and the projects start getting designed and fixed and built. So they're on hold because they require a future use, and when it's determined through that process, my team activates.
Yeah, I mean, on hold is a realistic view of the world when we don't have a future use, and it's fair that that should be the case. But with anything that's on hold, there always needs to be a process to bring it off hold when we've done the work, and clearly that's something that can happen in this case.
And the Little River Coronation Library, I believe, has come off hold now, so Richie's team will start investigating, putting it back together and reopening it.
Yeah, fantastic, and that's good news. Excellent. All right, thank you very much indeed for that. So do I have a mover for the resolutions here? Okay, so all right, Dion and Pauline. Okay.
So you've got to get out. You should be very pleased with your
It's a reasonably non-contentious set of recommendations anyway. Okay, is there any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is